Cool. There we go. All right. So, welcome everybody to the SoCal PowerShell user group. Tonight we have with us James Petty. He is the recipient of the Cloud and Data Center Management MVP award from Microsoft, and he serves as the CEO of the DevOps Collective, which does a lot of work in the PowerShell community, and they really make things like the PowerShell Summit happen and the Automation Summit, and just a lot of great things year round. So, without further ado, I will turn it over to James, and he's going to give us the know-how of Plaster.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, and thanks everyone for having me. I did just, we were talking a little bit earlier, I did just move into a new office, so if I'm really echoey, just let me know, and I can see if I can try to fix that. This is about the best I can do at the moment without opening a door, in which case you'll hear crickets, so I guess it's cricket. So you can kind of pick your poison. All right, so like Matt said, we're going to be talking a little bit about Plaster. You probably haven't heard about this module for the last couple of years. You might have even thought it was dead, as it was for a while. So kind of a quick backstory. So Microsoft came out with Plaster, and as the team tends to do sometimes, they take off more than they can chew. With budget cuts and constraints, et cetera, et cetera. They simply just didn't have enough time or cycles in their development cycles to be able to put effort back into Plaster. There were like about 100 or so issues, 10 or at least 10 pull requests that were just sitting there for 2017 as kind of when they stopped actively maintaining it. So they reached out to Jeff Hicks and myself and asked if PowerShell.org wanted to take ownership of it. So we did that. That happened at the beginning of this year. And of course, with things going as they are, it also just kind of sat on the back burner for a little bit. But we are back at it now. Big shout out to Gilbert. I know he's here somewhere. He's helped us out in the last few weeks, actually about the last week or so, getting us back up to speed. And if Teams doesn't quit changing their layout here. All right. So I absolutely hate PowerPoints, so I don't have too many slides here. I also can't see the chat, so if someone has a question or something, just kind of pop in from there. So again, my name is James Petty. I'm the CEO for PowerShell.org and the DevOps Collective, a 2-time recipient of the Microsoft MVP Award in the Cloud and Data Center Management. I co-lead the Chattanooga PowerShell user group. We're kind of dormant at the moment due to COVID. We've sent out numerous polls to our members, and they're just not interested in anything virtual. And obviously, they're not. No one really wants to meet in person yet either. So we're going to try again after the beginning of the year. And I live in Signal Mountain, Tennessee, kind of overlooking the Chattanooga Valley, the Tennessee-Georgia border. I am contractually obligated to remind everyone about the Automation Summit coming up November 15th through the 17th. That's supposed to say 2021. It's just in a few weeks. It's about 50-something days from now. It's a virtual event. It was going to be in Nashville, but for obvious reasons that we won't talk about, no one wants to fly to Nashville. So we moved it to a virtual event. We also had to move it back 2 weeks because we can't do an event at the same time as Ignite. And the cost for that is $300. There's the website you can get your information at. The updated schedule is coming out, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. Everyone who dropped out is now coming back. So we're going to have a little over 50 sessions over 3 days. It's going to be a good time. Hope to see a lot of you there. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about Plaster. So first off, what is Plaster? Well, that's a great question. Plaster is a scaffolding engine developed by the PowerShell team. And you're like, scaffolding, what's that? So like literally think of when you build a house, you kind of get your framework. So when you're starting to put your brick or your siding or whatever else you want to do, you literally put scaffolding around your house so that you can kind of reach from the bottom to the top. So that's kind of the same concept that we're doing here with Plaster. We're going to give it a manifest file. Is kind of what we're going to be working with, and we're gonna take that file. And we're gonna tell it this is everything that we want in our in our module, or modules, or functions, or DSC resources, or pester test, or whatever you kind of want them for, and it's going to just churn out these kind of these shells for. We're going to be focusing on modules, but again, they do work for just about anything. And if we have some time at the end, I'll show you some resources about some people who've done it with Go as well. So kind of engines outside of PowerShell. So I'm running this in PowerShell 7. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So the first thing we're going to do, so if you run the find module command, or I guess is the font on my VS Code good?
Looks good to me.
Oh, perfect. Oh, there's a chat. I figured out how to do the chat. All right, so we run the find module. The first thing we're going to see is version 1.1.3. That was the last version that the Microsoft team published up to the gallery. And if you notice up above here, I am at version 1.1.4. Thanks to help of big help from Gilbert, and also one for other maintainers, David Littlejohn, we were able to get this off the ground, get this refactored, and actually start moving again. Unfortunately, for right now, we can't publish this to the gallery because of the name constraint. We don't want to run into that pester and pester issue that we had 2 or 3 years, from version 3 to version 4. So we're working with the team to try to get the ownership of Plaster from the gallery moved over. Those conversations are happening. That should be done by the end of the week. So hopefully we'll have a 1.1.4 up probably by next week. And really the only difference between 3 and 4 is the all on our administrative and all of the pester tests were updated to version 5, and we have a new release pipeline that went from @Boyer to GitHub Actions. But if you do want the latest and greatest, then what you'll need to do is download. We'll go here to the Pester homepage. So if you're here to the Pester homepage, it's PowerShell.org/PesterPlaster. So if you want to download 1.1.4 currently, you download the code here, and you get the zip file. And they're over here near the screen where you can't see it. So you get your zip file, and then you want to take this Plaster folder right here, and then put it over wherever your modules live on your machine. In this case, I'm in Documents PowerShell modules. That's kind of my PS home, and then plop it right there. And then of course you'll need to import module Plaster. I can see I'm gonna have problems with this all night. So once you copy it over there, you import the module Plaster, and then from there you'll see that we have 1.1.4 installed. And then we can also see the 4 commands that come with Plaster. The get Plaster template, invoke Plaster, new Plaster manifest, and a test Plaster manifest. Oop, and I kind of skipped over these, so I'm not going to backtrack. Okay, so let's take a few minutes and let's talk about the structure of this manifest file. So what we focus, all of the meat and potatoes of Plaster lives in this one manifest file. Right now, that file is XML. Yes, I'm sorry, it looks awful, but that's the way it is. So this manifest file has 3 parts. It has a metadata section, parameter section, and a content section. And just as you kind of imagine, or if you can kind of base on these terms, so the metadata section of the manifest is used to supply the information about the template that we're going to make. The parameters of this manifest file is used to describe the choices, the templates, the choices that users can choose to create their templates from. And then the content section is where the action actually happens. This is what does all the work in creating our modules. All right, so without further ado, let's look at some code. I may forget to go back to my PowerPoint, but if I do, it's fine, because there's really nothing else in there. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is, if you go and look in the Plaster module, there is a a new PowerShell module, manifest module in there, and that is kind of a template you can kind of start working from. So we'll just kind of look at this real quick. If you have more than one of these, the get Plaster template, it will kind of show up. One thing to notice is that when we talk about manifest files, we don't actually tell it what XML file to use. We just give it the folder that the XML file lives in. And then from there, to get Plaster template, we'll find it. So in this case, we just did a little where object just to make sure we got the exact one. So we'll take a look at the info that's in it real quick. So this is all the information this is the metadata that is in this in the default or the example that we're going to be playing with here for a minute. And now I'm just setting some variables so I don't have to type everything the whole time. So let's go ahead and run this example manifest file and let's see what actually happens. So we're going to run the invoke Plaster. So that's where we're actually telling Plaster to do the thing. The template path, this is the path to the XML. So if we see this here, we can see that's the full path. That's where the XML file lives. And then this is where we want to, where it's going to put our new module that we're doing. So we'll just run this so that we can see we have some fancy layout here, and then it's asking us some questions. So the name of my module and the version number. There is some regex behind this, so you have to have at least a number, a dot, and a number. You can have as many numbers and dots as you want, but you must have at least two numbers and one dot. And in this instance, it's asking, am I using Visual Studio Code or not? And I'll show you why in a minute. So we have some fancy output here where it spits out to the screen. So we say it created our PSD1, our PSM1. It created a default test, Plaster test for us. It created some VS Code settings and a VS Code task that we wanted to put out. And then it made sure that we had at least Plaster 4.0.3. This has been kind of a hard or pain point for some people. Hopefully in the next release or two, we'll have this upgraded to version 5. But obviously not everyone is using version 5 kind of in a production environment. It takes a lot of effort to get Plaster upgraded. So we made, you can come in here and you can actually change this. This is just the default example that came here, but we'll show you how to program this however you want. All right, so now let's just kind of take a look. So we look over here on the left, this Plaster demo 1, this is what it made. So this was not here before. If you don't believe me, I guess you'll have to go back to the recording and prove that it wasn't there. So this is the VS Code. It created our 2 JSON files with just some basic information in them here. And then it created our test folder with a sample test. Now again, this is Plaster 4, so obviously if I click the run test, it's going to fail because this is not the correct syntax, but the point is that it's there. And then it created our module manifest file, our PSD1 here, and you can see it passed in some of the information here that we gave it. And then our PSM1, we'll kind of show you how to do this here. But if you do the new, what's the command? New module, whatever that command is. This is what the blank one that kind of pops out is. All right, so let's just kind of take a look here and see what it did. So this is our manifest file. I take that back. I got ahead of myself. So what we've done here is we've just looked at this basic file. So actually, let me browse here real quick and actually show you what that file looks like. It says I have multiple versions of VS Code open, even though I don't. So I can't, without having to do a thing that's this long. So anyway, so let's just come here. So this is what the manifest file, the XML file that it's reading from. This is kind of what it's looking like. And by the end of this presentation, we're going to have one that looks very similar to this. So we can see, we can just go through here real quick. Here's the metadata that we were asking for. And then we have the parameters like we talked about. It asked me for my module name. This is where it asked me for the version number. It asked me, am I using VS Code? And then down here, the content, it spit out a message to the screen. And this is where it's actually doing some of the work, and we'll go over that here in a minute. Any questions so far? If you're not familiar with XML and its structure, you might have a headache by the end of it, and I'm sorry. But once you actually kind of see it and it actually starts making sense, you're gonna be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's why I had to take 2 Advil a while ago, because I was doing this most of the day. All right, seems that I don't hear any questions, although my headset has gone out before. It was still there. Okay. All right, so we're gonna keep moving on. I don't see anything in the chat. That's where we did that. Okay, lost my spot. All right, so now let's take a minute and let's look at the help file here for Plaster. Goodness gracious. I just did this in the show window so that it pops out so that we can actually see it. So we can see the parameters that it's looking for, kind of what kind of information they accept, and then of course the syntax for the new for the new Plaster manifest, which we'll look at here in just a little bit. Online help is currently broken for this. That's one of the things I think that's on the radar to get fixed. So just so you know. All right. So next thing we're going to do. So now we've used an example of someone. So that's kind of a good start. But we're going to start from scratch here. I take it back. We're not going to start from scratch. What we just looked at was coming off of that demo XML file, but we don't have to read off of the XML file. Plaster has the ability to do dynamic parameters, so I can pass it this information. It does everything on the fly and will spit it out. The XML file is just great for reusability, but we can definitely do everything that we want to do here with this hash table and splatting. Splatting is one of my favorite things about PowerShell. So we're just going to come here. We're going to get all of our information here. And then now we're going to, so I just took the new Plaster manifest. If we were to look at the help, we could see that we can use a path to get the information. We can also splat the information here as well. These are the things or the objects that it's looking for. And then if we come out here to the, it's going to create Plaster demo. Now, it didn't do anything. You're like, well, I gave you this information. Where's my PSD1? Where's my PSM1? Where's my test folder? Well, that's because right now we haven't told it to do anything yet. All we've done is give it the metadata that it needs to start building the module. So what I've done here is I've taken this information that we took here in our hash table, and I just moved it over here into the XML document. Now this might be kind of where your head kind of starts spinning a little bit. But the first thing you're going to want to do, so this is an XML file, and this format document is definitely going to be your best friend. You're going to see me use that a lot. So if you don't already have an XML formatter installed in VS Code, I highly suggest that you do that. You can go to the marketplace. There are hundreds of them here. Even if you do format document, you don't have one installed, it's going to pop up and say, do you want to install one? So I did the first one that came up. It was XML support from Red Hat. I figure Red Hat's a pretty good company. They have some pretty good engineers, so they probably know what they're doing. So that's the one I chose. I'm not saying that's the best one. I'm saying that was the first one that popped up in the list. All right, so we do that. So we're going to make sure that our format document, you can always open up the command palette as well and format document. And that will get all of your indentations lined up. Also, just another quick word here for a great extension is called. So you see here how I have all of my the spaces are all in different colors. That is then they're called rainbow or indent rainbow. The more tabs you get over, the more colors it will start filling in, so that you can visually see the number of spaces. So you see that's 3 spaces, that's 4 spaces. You can visually see and count the number of spaces, especially if you're working with the YAML files where spaces count. It's kind of a great thing. Just another one of my highly recommended extensions. All right, so like I said, this is, as I digress, this is simply the metadata here that we put over here. So we just took it from one, moved it to the other. All right, now we're going to move into the next part. So if you remember from our PowerPoint earlier, so we talked about the metadata. Now we're going to talk into the parameters. This is where I'm asking you, or you're asking yourself or whoever you're designing this for, questions about how they want their modules to look. Again, we're only talking about modules because that's the most useful, but this can also definitely, again, for functions, pester, test, anything you kind of want those for. So here we have some more, again, some XML. So it's parameter and prompt, and then we have the name of your module. It's a type of text. There's a couple different types of parameters that we can use. We'll go over these here in just a kind of as we go through. So this is a text. So think of this as the not the read line, the one where it reads from the prompt. I'm drawing a blank. This is what I get for not writing things down. So name of your module, this is the helpful text, and then this is the actual, this is basically a variable that's going to populate on the back end. Read host, that's what I'm trying to think of. So this is essentially read host. It's just only written in the XML and Plaster engine. We're going to do another text prompt here, the description of your module. Again, module description, or that's kind of what, on the back end, what we're going to be calling it. We can call these whatever we want. And you can have as many of these as you want. All right, so let's put these 2 in here. We'll come back to the module version here in just a second. So we're going to put these here in our parameter block here. We're just going to make a new line, paste those in there, format our document just to make sure everything looks pretty. We're going to save it. And now we're going to run this command here. This is what we're going to be running pretty much for the rest of the night. Oh no, that's because this is what I get for changing things right before we start too. All right, so again, if for just from 30 seconds ago, we can see name of your module. And if we look here, we told it to do Plaster demo. So it created it here. Again, there's nothing in here because we haven't told it to do anything yet, but we're building these variables here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask it, or we're going to have it prompt for a version number. Again, it's a type of text, but with the default this time, it's going to be 0.0.1. So these other 2, we had to put something in. If we didn't put something in, it's simply just going to run us in a circle until we do. Something has to be put in here. So we're just going to copy this, put it over here, just as the next parameter. Save, and then we're going to run. So we see here version number 0.0.1. So if you remember, if we look up here, we'll look and see version number. That's what it's asking, but we didn't tell it to put 0.0.1 inside of parentheses. What it's done is it's taken the default value and it's automatically put those in here. So you can put anything you want in here. It has to be, again, there's regex behind there. It has to be a number, dotted number. Or you can just push enter and it will accept the default value. Now again, our folder is still empty because we haven't done anything. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an author. Now this is not. So what this is doing here is, if you have GitHub installed on your machine already, and you already have, then you should be familiar with the user-full name and user-email that you have to configure in order for Git to talk to GitHub or GitLab. So Plaster can talk to those environment variables, so it can automatically pull those out for you. We're going to give this the name module author. Let's see this run. We're just gonna. And again, so it has the author. The default is James Petty. Note that is my user full name when we're talking to Git, or I can put something else in here. Any questions so far? No, it's still working. Okay. Nothing in the chat, and I don't hear anything. So we're gonna move on. All right, so that is kind of a quick rundown of the. I'll take back. There is one more parameter here. So let me show you what this does, and then we'll walk through it, because again, XML can be a pain. So what this done is we're prompting ourselves with a multiple choice, or if you want to think about the PowerShell terms, think of it as a switch. And in this instance, I'm asking, what kind of a license do you want to add? This is just an example that I picked. You can make this whatever you want, and we'll see some more examples a little later on of how you can change this. But we can say I can either give it an Apache license, an MIT license, or none. So this label here, this kind of what spits out here to the screen. This is some funky XML voodoo magic that you have to do, otherwise it doesn't work. The help, so you can see we have a question mark here. So if I do a question mark, it will show me. It reads from this helpline. And then the value here is Apache. Plaster does some very nice things on the back end, where it will take the first letter, put that here inside the square brackets, so you only have to do the first letter. You don't have to type the whole thing. And in this instance, we have defaulted to MIT for our as our default. We should also know that this does look at it as an array. So option 0, 1, and 2. Although this default should be. So again, it's a type of choice. The parameter name is. Why is this? It's reading in a different order. But this says our default is number 2, which actually in this case should be none. I don't know why it's defaulting to MIT. Unless it goes to 1, 2, and 3, which makes sense. But I'm pretty sure with 0, 1, 2, which that doesn't make sense. Oh, anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry about that. So that's a multiple choice. We have some more examples down here at the bottom. So we're just going to accept the default. All right, here is another type that we have. So this is a multiple choice, which is different from a choice. So a choice, you can only choose one. You can choose Apache or MIT or none. With a multiple choice, you can choose all or none. So again, we've saved these as so again. So I think this is an array, index 0, 1, 2, and 3, and here the default we have set to 0 and 1 and 2. So it's going to create a public. This supposed to say private. A public, a private, and a docs folder. And then our DSC resources, just kind of to show. Yeah, so we'll just add this here. No, we didn't like something. Oh no. It's a good thing. Have a cheat sheet. All right, I had a copy and paste error and I couldn't figure out what it was, so I have another one off screen that I was able to choose from. Public private docs. Yep, here we go. All right. So we'll run this again. And we can see again it's asking us for the same information. Set the defaults, accept the defaults. And then we can see here, here's another bug that I just discovered today. Because Plaster is so nice and it gives you the first letter of the option. So we can see here that we have a P and a P and a D and a D. That's because public and private both begin with P as in Papa, and docs and DSC resources both begin with D as in Delta. That is something that we'll have to tackle here a little bit later on. But right now you should know that the way it works is if you put P, you'll get public and private. And if you do D, you'll get docs and DSC resources in this particular example. But we're going to accept the defaults, which is public, private, and docs. Again, if we remember, go back and look, that's options 0, 1, and 2. All right, but again, our Plaster demo folder here is still empty. We still haven't done anything. All right, any questions before we actually make our module here? Any questions about parameters, metadata? This is where the fun begins. All right, so now we're going to move here into our content. So we're just going to go ahead and format this just so we know where to put it. So the first thing that we're going to do, actually, the first thing we should probably talk about real quick is the concept of run spaces. Anybody familiar with the concept of like a PowerShell run space? So that's where this little thing, everything here in Plaster runs this little itty bitty bubble, and I'm making hand gestures. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's where everything runs. And if whatever is not inside of that run space, then you can't use it. Perfect, Stephen. All right, so we have to understand that Plaster runs in its own. Oh yeah, it's kind of like PowerShell jobs, yeah. So Plaster runs in its own run space, and because when the PowerShell folks were doing this, they wanted to make sure that you could only access certain information. So they made it a constrained run space to make sure it didn't do anything erroneous. Because of that, these are the only things that you have access to. So you have access to all of your parameters. You remember we had author name, full name, module description. We had those variables, and then these are other built-in variables here. We'll use some of these here in just a few minutes, and then you can also run these PowerShell commands. That's it. That's all you can run. You can't create. If you notice, there's not a new item. There's not a copy item. There's not a remove item. There's none of that. All of that is kind of done via the Plaster APIs. So again, it's just kind of you need to remember that even though we're working in PowerShell, we're working in a very constrained environment, and this is all that we have access to. So because of that, things are gonna, might look a little wonky here. All right, so we'll get started. So first, we're going to use our new module manifest. So this is the same thing as the command that we ran earlier. We're telling our destination, and then this is where we're starting to use those variables that we just talked about. So everything has that plaster param and then the module name. So this is going to create our PSD1, the module version that we put in here. So remember, we asked for that module, that version. The root module is our PSM1 file. The author, something that we asked for, and a description that we asked for. And then we're going to copy. So file source in this instance means we're going to create a new file. So remember, Plaster is not about making it's not about making files. It's taking a template that you have already created for your own either personal use, for open source use inside of your company, kind of wherever, and it's going to copy that file over into this instance. It's going to make a PSM1 file out of your template. So the source is template.psm1. Everything also has to be in the same folder, so we should also remember that. So here's this template.psm1. Very basic, generic. This is what probably 80% of PowerShell modules on the gallery have as their PSM1 file. If you have one in your own company that you have, you use this for every single module, put it here. This is where you copy it at. And this is where we're going to copy it to. It's our destination folder. We're going to copy this. We're going to put that here in the content. Format our document. I will say the format document does tend to run things off of the screen. So you might see it in one way over here on this screen, kind of broken out like this. But then when I guess just the plugin that I'm using that does the format, it puts it all on one line. You don't have to. You can keep it broken up just like this, if you so chose to. All right. So now let's take a look, and now let's see what it does. I think we're up to number 7. Oh, look at that. So we have the verbose flag. So if you don't want to have this in here, it's just going to say undone. I like to have the verbose flag, so it spits out the screen and tells me what it actually said. But we look up here, it created our man. So we were in this Plaster demo. That's where we told it to put it. Remember, this has been empty before. So now we have our PSD1. This is all the information that we passed to it. Some of the stuff that we didn't pass in that we could have, like company name, you could have easily passed on. When I do stuff like this, I work for myself, so I don't have a company, so I'm known as perfectly fine. And then this is that PSM1 file, that template that we had. They got copied over. So again, if you have your own any kind of files that you want blanket, we'll get the test here in a few minutes, but any kind of files that you want to copy over, that you want to make sure that are in every single module that you make, this is where Plaster kind of starts making sense. Because up until this point, you're like, oh, you made a fancy copy and paste script, or a copy item and move item script. But again, so where Plaster starts kind of making sense is these customizable things that we'll be looking at, and again, so how you can copy those items over. All right, so we did our PSM1, and now we're going to. Oh, that's copy and paste error. All right, so remember back in our up here, we had some license things that we wanted to do. So what we're doing here, so this is a template file. So file source means take this one file and copy it verbatim over from point A to point B. A templated file means take the file that I have, and then we can change some things. Thanks, yeah. And then we can change some things inside of here. So let's just take a look at these. So this is just the Apache and the MIT copied verbatim from their website. But what we have done is, so if you look at both the MIT and the Apache, they have a year and the author or company name or whoever. So in this instance, you have to do some funky XML stuff here. So we're just writing the copyright and then the year. This is one of the built-in variables that we talked about. And then the module author. And it's going to print this actually out to the screen. Or not to the screen, to the file. We did the same thing here with the MIT. So you only got to put these little things here on the lines that you want to modify. That you don't have to put it in the whole thing. You can, but that's just kind of wasted resources. These do have to be on new lines by themselves. They can't be inline as well. So that's why I have the copyright and all that stuff there in front of it. So this is how we do that. So this is the condition. Remember, that was a choice. We had Apache or MIT or none. So basically, think of it as an if. So if the condition Plaster param license, which is what we called it, up at the top we called it license, is equal to MIT, and source is license MIT. Same if we want to do Apache. I forgot to write this, so we'll just do it on the fly. So if the parameter license is equal to Apache, then copy the apache.md file and put it and call it license.md. So this is, again, one or the other. So make sure we put this right here. Always make sure you put it above this content, otherwise it's going to yell at you. And just so we can see things better, I'm just going to delete this Plaster demo, but don't worry, it'll be right back. And now let's run this again. All right, so we saw here, what do we call it? Plaster demo. And then we have I know that was kind of confusing. But here, what I want to point out, again, it made our two files. We've already established that. Here, it made the license file. So remember before the MIT, we had that funky XML. So it put the year and the author name here. If you're doing this for your company, you would probably want to ask for a company name or hard-coded company name. In a variable, and then put this as company instead of author name. And then I think the last thing that we have here, oh good, we're kind of right. Running a little fast, but it'll be time for some questions. Be perfect. So the last thing that we have here, we asked for the files. Did we want to have what kind of folder structure do we want to have? Did we want to have that? Where'd it go? Did we want to have the public and the private and the docs and the DSC resources? And remember, the default is public, private, docs. So that was the default. So we're just going to, so message means that we're going to print out to the screen, write host. And here we're doing, so the file, so we've already talked about source, but because the source is empty, it's just an empty string. The destination is the module name here, public, private, docs, and then condition, this is what we talked about. So it was a multiple choice, so it contains public or the private or the docs. So that's just how it will actually do the work. Put this here above the content, format. Delete this Plaster demo again so we can get everything new. It will overwrite itself. We can run it again and we can see. It will, if it detects that there is already a license file or something there, it will say, hey, do you want to overwrite this with this new one? All right, now we've upgraded. We're version 1.0 now. MIT. So again, because of verbose output, we can see it created a public and private in the docs. And here's my module here. So the root of my module, module 4, the folders that it created, my license file, my PSD1, and my PSM1. So from here, I really could kind of keep going on, but it's all at this point. It's just if you want to put a README file over here, put your README file over here. If you want to run copy your pester test, you just create a file called test, and then you copy a basic pester test file over, or test. Maybe you have hundreds of tests at your company that every PowerShell module has to have in there. So you can just copy those over using the file source. All right. Anybody have any questions? That's a kind of not a high level, kind of a medium level overview of Plaster.
Thanks for that, James. It's been a while since I've used Plaster, and I was wondering, I wasn't wondering, I forgot how much I hated XML. And I was wondering if there's going to be any plans now that it's kind of been taken over by a new group to support things like JSON or YAML or other spec file formats that could be used in place of XML.
Yes, so we are working on converting XML to JSON. It is proving more difficult than we thought, but that is kind of our 2.0 release will be with JSON. I think we have about half of those modules rewritten already.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, I absolutely despise XML. I understand why it was chosen. That doesn't mean that I have to agree with it.
Definitely not.
But for now, this is kind of how we'll do it, and then we'll obviously we won't make XML go away. At least I don't think it's going to be a breaking change because we still want everyone to be able to use their existing manifest files. But obviously, being able to get into a JSON or a YAML format, I absolutely hate YAML as well. But if you use Rainbow Indent, like I was talking about earlier, then it's not as bad. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the most active. Well, I say one of the most active. It's one of the few issues that we left open from when we carried it over. Anybody else have any questions or anything about Plaster? Anybody maybe see potential uses for this your place of employment or for personal use?
I wrote my my first module project with Plaster. It was awesome. It really helped.
Yeah, it takes a while to kind of wrap your head around how it's working. But then at least for me, once I kind of understood that, it's like, oh, and then now every module that kind of gets pumped out has the exact same format that I like. It has my basic README files in it. The README file has the information I want on it. You can also, one of the things that you can also put basic GitHub actions in here. We didn't talk about it, but you can create a .vs code. We saw the .vs code. You can do the .git. You can also do the workflows folder if you have basic GitHub action workflows that you put in all of your modules. You can do those. Put all those in there as well.
I've got a couple more questions if others aren't ready to chime in yet. Why does Plaster run in a constrained environment? I actually didn't know that prior to this.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until I think yesterday when I was trying to do something. But I think from what I've gathered so far, it is because it's kind of a templated format. You're trying to copy existing items over, or copies templates that you already have, so you don't want it to be able to do a lot of things to begin with. So you're just trying, if you constrain it to only do what it needs to do to be able to do, it can run a lot faster. Which I think is obviously the ultimate goal, to let everything run as fast as it can.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for answering that. And then one you brought up templating, and as someone who is deep into the SRE world right now, templating is kind of our bread and butter for a lot of different reasons. And I didn't realize that Plaster can't do inline templating. So is there any plans for that? Any plans on expanding the templating language that Plaster has?
Are you talking about? Wait, you're talking about like what I did right here with the licenses?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein like Jinja. Like I don't if you've ever used Jinja templating, like you can do really complex expressions and stuff with Jinja, all in line. It just seems to be a pretty advanced templating language, and I didn't know if the plan was to move Plaster in that direction or to kind of keep it simple, stupid with Plaster, like what I think it was kind of originally designed to be.
Yeah. So I will say, you can try to get it. I probably shouldn't have said the way I said it. Inline does work. I just could not for the life of me figure out how to do it. But here's an example of inline working.
Oh, got it.
Now, I think my problem was this was just putting something by itself. I could not for the life of me uh, try to get. So this is what it's. So if you download this from MIT or from the website, this is kind of what it looks like. So I was just trying to do this, get this Plaster name and this module author to go right here, but not mess with this copyright and this C right here and the copyright symbol. And I probably spent 2 or 3 hours on that. And I couldn't get that inline to work. So I think trying to monkey with it like that, but that definitely something we should probably work on, is getting the inline stuff to work so that they don't have to be on their own, on their own separate lines like this. If that answered your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. And while you're answering that question, we have a question in chat. Stephen, and I'm going to butcher your name, but Gulat, sorry if that was wrong, asked, can you control the constraint? I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but maybe you know?
I guess, so Stephen, I'm assuming you are referring to letting it do more than just these commands. Is that an accurate statement? Yes, okay. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is you have to start going in and monkeying with the actual module itself. And then the next time that you do an update module, that's just going to come through and wipe out your custom settings. So if there's something that you really needed to do, you can always open an issue inside of, inside GitHub, and we can kind of see if it's something that we could look at. But what exactly did you kind of have in mind, or were we just kind of a generic, can I make it do more thing? Okay, so I think it's more of like, can you, as a, okay. Yeah, so
I think that's James saying to you, Stephen, that you should contribute to the open source software on GitHub.
Yeah, and again, also a big, I know I said it like 3 times, a big shout out to Gilbert, who got a lot of our pester, all of our pester tests and our GitHub actions release pipeline working yesterday.
Oh, that's huge.
I see someone typing. Does anyone else have any questions? I think I budgeted for like an hour, and then when I saw the invite, I saw it was an hour and a half. I was like, oh.
No worries at all. Like
Yeah, but
it's an hour and a half by default, really.
Hey guys.
I see. Oh, go ahead. Hey, go Rick.
Hey, I just wanted to say, hopefully, if you guys see any issues submitting PRs, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that. But the way that it was designed was we automatically run tests when you submit PRs. So the nice thing is that when you submit those PRs, you'll know right away whether adding breaking changes or anything like that. So.
Yeah, so we have all of the workflows. So it runs. I forgot how many tests. I think there's 70 tests that it runs right now. Every time something is put in, a PR is a pull request inside of GitHub in this instance.
Yeah, and we're also running it on every OS, or every OS being Windows, Mac, and Ubuntu. So that's actually 210 tests, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so the new version, the 1.1.4 that we're doing, I think is 100% cross-platform. I think is an accurate statement.
That's awesome. That's a huge jump.
Yeah, I haven't actually installed Plaster on my Windows or inside my Linux host, but there's no reason why it shouldn't work. I should probably do that before I make that statement in public.
And definitely don't forget to, if anybody submits PRs, don't forget to include tests for your PRs. That's also a huge add to have.
Yes, I will. I will send this demo over to Matt and let him post it wherever he posts his things. Or
Yep,
or I can put it in my own GitHub, kind of whichever is easier.
Yeah. Put the definitely put all the code wherever is best for you, and then I'll send. If you send me the link after this, I'll blast it out with the recording and all that at the same time, so that everybody has the same information.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can do that. So, and then of course, here is our GitHub link. It's PowerShell org/plaster. Other than that, so at least you guys don't have any questions, and that's all. That's all that I have.
Last chance. Any lingering questions? Oh, I see David Bird's typing.
No problem, David. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, it is 10:30 here on the East Coast, so I will let you guys go, and we will hopefully see each other again next month. Well, I mean, I'll just be a guest. I won't be presenting next time, but.
Thanks for coming, James. I really appreciate it. That was awesome. And
Yeah.
and thanks for staying up so late doing this as well. I always appreciate that.
No problem. So it might be in the morning before I actually get these stuff over to you.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Night, everybody.